Right, this is my Civic 1.6 D16, and today I'm going to show you how to fit launch control on a budget, not including the shift light that I've got there. It costs around £4 altogether, with parts from Maplin. I've drawn a little schematic here of how I made it, which I suppose I should talk people through. The parts you're going to need are this transistor here. I've drawn it there, that's the part code. It's a BC635. Found that one works best for what we're wanting to do. And you'll need a 5k resistor, any wattage, it doesn't really matter, just the small type. And you will also need a relay like this one. It's a 12 volt 10 amp relay. And it can be wired with the 3 prongs at the bottom, normally open or normally closed. If you don't know what that means, basically this wire is the common, as I've labelled it, and what that does is that's where your wire goes in that you're wanting to switch, and depending whether you wire it out from this one or that one, we're going to use that one says not used, it will either be connected until it gets power and then it'll disconnect, or if you normally open, it'll be disconnected, and when it gets power it will connect. I'll explain in a bit why we're going to have it normally closed, because we want it to be connected all the time until this side receives 12 volts and it'll disconnect the 2 wires, which you can see there. Look, they're going to go to the distributor. So if we connect to these 2 here, then when this relay receives 12 volt it will cut the distributor because it's normally closed. So when you're running normally, your distributor will be fine. Then when it gets 12 volt, click open and it'll disconnect the feed to your distributor. Right, so the way it works is you have your shift light up here, and you take off the LED on the shift light if it is an LED. Mine is, I'll show you it. Mine consists of 4 LEDs running from blue to red. I'll just light that up and show you. The red one's on the far right, you just saw it blink there. When I rev the car, like this, I've set it at 4K at the moment. You'll see what happens. Very basic. That was like a tenner off of eBay, so it's not a dear build. Yeah, so the shift light is set at 4K on the red LED. So what we do is, on this diagram, we connect the right hand side pin of this transistor there. That's the base when the flat side is up, the round side is to the bottom. We connect that to the positive on the red LED. Now I've had this apart already, and I've ran the white wire there. You can see it's very bodged into the side with the rest of its original wires, and that wires to the positive on that red LED. So every time that lights up, it's sending positive power down the white wire. That white wire goes through my dash to this pin here on the transistor, which is under there somewhere. I'll show you that in a bit. The rest of the wires, the emitter from the transistor, which is the opposite side, that gets grounded. So basically, my transistor is there in some tape. The white wire goes into the pin I just showed you, and the opposite side pin here is grounded. So I've soldered that to some random black wire under there that I tested as ground with my multimeter. Then out of the centre one, we have one wire which goes through to my engine bay. You can do this a number of different ways, which I'll show you in a moment. I'm probably best off going to the engine bay at this point to explain the rest of it. Right, so here we are in the engine bay. I've showed you this point here, so shift light, 5k resistor to the base, emitter is just grounded in the car, and the collector, we wire a wire off of there, which comes through my bulkhead there, runs across the engine bay, and there we have the distributor. So at this point well, sorry, it goes from the collector through the engine bay to the coil on the relay there. Now there is my relay, very bodged. Is that there? These two pins here are the coil pins there. So this wire from the collector, the centre pin on your transistor, goes to that pin there, which is this one. Right, sorry about that. So we go from the collector there. I just got distracted a moment ago, that's all. I had to talk to someone, so I paused the video. There we go, that's that wire there, and two pins on the relay go here, that's connected, and then it carries on to a switch 12 volt. Now this switch 12 volt is going to be what activates the launch control. So if you have 12 volt going down that wire from your switch 12 volt source, then you will have launch control at your shift light revs. I've recently removed my fog lights, which came off this loom here. Now the fog lights have a 12 volt feed to them in the bumper, so I've used that. So my fog light button in my car turns on and off my launch control, which is a bit weird, but yeah, that runs there, and it's the black and red. So I know just a black wire goes to the other side of the two pins on the relay, which are there. So that's the opposite side of that wire which comes in. Just a quick thing to note, on the two pins there for the coil, you do need a diode. It's called a flashback diode. What it does is it just stops return of voltage, and that needs to be wired like this, whereby the band on the diode faces your 12 volt feed, not your transistor. So in amongst that tape I do have a diode across them two pins, and the band is on this side, not that side, because that's where my 12 volts coming from here. So it's all making sense up to now. When you get your relay, I will put a description in the, well, I'll put some notes in the description as to what part number this is from Maplin if you want it. It's only like £2 I think. It has 3 pins in like a triangle. These two here, that one's supposed to be in the middle, that one's higher. So you wire into the two closest ones to the coil. You'll be able to work out which ones they are with a multimeter, just by testing them. One will be common, one will be normally closed. So if you do a diode test through them, they're the ones that do give you a value. So to them we have a live wire which activates the distributor there. So what I did was I looked at this plug to the distributor, tested all them, and found out they were all signal wires and they weren't actually power wires. And we have a secondary plug here going to the distributor, and the blue wire there I tested to be 12 volts. So I would presume that wire would be the one that I was going to be cutting. So I unplugged there, tried to start the car, and sure enough it wouldn't fire up. It would crank over but it wouldn't actually ignite. So that was the wire, the blue wire there, that I chopped. As you can see, that's the pin that isn't used. I bent it out of the way. So the pins would be there and there in like a triangle. It's that one and that one. So that there is the blue wire, and it goes through the relay. So what we've got is, in summary I suppose, we've got your live, which is going to activate your launch control. I've done that to fog lights. If you wanted to do it better than I did, you could do it with like a button on your gear knob, because we're going to have a launch, like at the minute I'm going to have a launch control, well, a hard cut rev limiter at 4000, which is what my shift light is set at. But if you wanted to launch properly, you would need to obviously get rid of that so you can rev past that in first gear once you're moving. So the best method would be a little red push button on your gear knob. Obviously you could hold that down. Whenever it'd be held down, you would allow 12 volts to the circuit that we've made, and you'd have a 4000 or whatever you've set it at rev limiter, and then as soon as you're moving you'd let go of the button and you'd be back into a normal rev band. I just sort of turn off my fog lights after I've set off, which is a bit stupid, but it was just a bit of a test to see if this would all work, and it does. Works pretty well. So yeah, what else are we getting back to? So yeah, if you were doing that, you wouldn't have this coming here. You'd probably run another wire back into your car, connect it to a permanent 12 volt feed, like just off the ignition barrel, or a 12 volt feed to a bulb in your dash or something like that. It's the easiest thing that's got a constant 12 volt, and then obviously the button would give the system 12 volts, and you could let go when you didn't want launch control. So I will show you how it all works. I have to just pop into the car. Alright, we're back in the car. You'll have to excuse all the boost gauges and stuff in the intercooler and the fuel management unit if you noticed under the bonnet, because this car is going to be turbo pretty soon, so that's why I've actually installed this. Right, so that's my fog light button. So with the fog lights off, there's no 12 volt here, so none of this will even work with it off, so it'll just be a shift light that does nothing. If we turn on the fog lights, then that wire I showed you under the bonnet gets 12 volt, a permanent 12 volt, so this whole system does work. And obviously what's happening is, every time 12 volts, every time voltage is sensed on this wire, it's just flicking the relay open and cutting power to the distributor. So if we turn them on, you'd have a rev limiter like this. And that's it really. It works pretty well in general. Obviously all shift lights are adjustable, so you can set them to any RPM you want to. That was just a quick test at 4. That's it really altogether. Like I say, when I launch, I have to have one hand here and turn that off once I've got grip, once I'm moving. But like I say, if you had a button here that gave 12 volts, you could hold it down, have your launch control, and as soon as you'd set off you could just let go. I'm not going to do a launch because I'm on my street and people would complain and I'd probably crash. But yeah, that's all in all really. I'll put some links in the description to part numbers. Yeah, thanks for watching.